Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 11. Another classic verse in the chapter full of classic verses. Vadanti tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
Jai.
Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. Purport. The absolute truth is both subject and object, and there is no qualitative difference there. Therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees. In other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word of the absolute truth. Paramatma is the partial representation of the personality of Godhead, and impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun god. Less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization, but those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of vision. As it is explained in the first shloka of the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, the supreme truth is self-sufficient, cognizant, and free from the illusion of relativity. In the relative world, we know in the relative world, the knower is different from the known. But in the absolute truth, both the knower and the known are one and the same thing. In the relative world, the knower is the living spirit or superior energy, whereas the known is inert matter or inferior energy. Therefore, there is a duality of inferior and superior energy, whereas in the absolute realm, both the knower and the known are of the same superior energy. There are three kinds of energies of the supreme energetic. There's no difference between the energy and energetic, but there is a difference of quality of energies. The absolute realm and the living entities are of the same superior energy, but the material world is inferior energy. The living being in contact with the inferior energy is illusion, thinking he belongs to the inferior energy. Therefore, there is a sense of relativity in the material world. In the absolute truth, in the absolute, there is no such sense of difference between the knower and the known, and therefore everything there is absolute. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, in the previous verses, we heard about how life's desire should be directed towards sense gratification. You should desire a healthy life or preservation, since the human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. And all occupational engagements are meant for ultimate liberation. And that absolute truth is described here in verse 11. So this verse is a summary of the answer to the question of what is spiritual reality. In other words, as we've been hearing in different times, the Vedas deal with basically what are the different, what is the living entity, what is material nature, what is the supreme, what are the different categories of reality? What do we do about that? In other words, how do we apply that to our lives and what the goal is? And the first thing, the different categories is called Sambanta. This is a very fundamental point of Sambanta. What is the absolute truth? How does it manifest? And so there's these three fundamental manifestations, which are non-different. But as Prabhupada points out, less intelligent students of any of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization. What this means is that one may have a conception that Brahman, the impersonal, diffused aspect, or Paramatma or Bhagavan, are actually exclusive to the other two. And that's not true, as Prabhupada points out. But those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the absolute truth are different perspectives seen from different angles of vision. In the verse, Tattvam yajnanam advayam, advayam means non-dual. They're non-different from each other. They're on the same platform. Just like when you're approaching a mountain, from a distance, the mountain appears to be a vague kind of oneness. There's just like a thing in the distance, and it all looks like one thing, right? And as you get closer, then there's some variety in that. You can see that there's actually a shape, and you can actually see, you can make out some features, some color, maybe a little texture. And when you're on the mountain, there's trees. The trees have needles. The needles have little insects on them. There's birds, and there's shafts of sunlight coming in, and grass, blades of grass, and people walking around. It's a whole variety on that one mountain. All this variety with relationship and connection and all kinds of detail. And so this is the same mountain, different perspectives of vision. And so what this means for us is that we can trust that our process of bhakti, which is aiming at Bhagavan, is not a separate thing from meditation on the impersonal Brahman or realization of Paramatma. It actually includes those things. So in the Upanishads, there are several verses which deal with the impersonal aspect of the Supreme. And there are some verses about the Paramatma, and then there's less, again, less verses about Bhagavan. The idea is that the progressive student is meant to be situated in Brahman. Traditionally, this was how it was done. As Bhagavad Gita explains, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatmana Shochitina Kamshati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labate Para. 1855, 54, 54. Yeah, Krishna says that being situated in Brahman, one neither laments or desires anything. One is equally disposed to everyone. In such a state, one is qualified to attain me through bhakti. In the next verse, he says, only by bhakti can I be attained as I am. In other words, it's Bhagavan with all that variety. So traditionally, the advancing student would meditate on the Brahman, and then they would become qualified to approach Paramatma, and they would gradually realize Bhagavan. And what we find in this day and age is that study of the Upanishads and trying to follow that gradual path is generally unsuccessful because it's too slow. We don't have qualifications for it. We're not intellectually qualified for it. We're not actually able to control our senses. We don't live long enough. We're not trained from not quite birth, but close to birth, very, very young age, to control our senses and be completely dedicated to spiritual knowledge and have perfect guidance from gurus. It just, so many pieces of that relationship are missing. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya comes and gives us the Maha Mantra, and it's the express elevator. We don't actually meditate on Brahman. We chant Hare Krishna. We're actually, it's incredible if you think about how accelerated this process is. Before we realize what we're doing, we're actually associating with the Supreme in his feminine and masculine features as the supreme energy of devotion and love and the supreme enjoyer of love directly. And we don't know it, but we start to feel something. And as we feel it, we take it, practice up more seriously. we chant more and more attentively. We start to study the Shastra. We understand what actually we're doing, what this mantra means, who we are, and gradually realize the enormity of the gift that we've been given. So as we are picking up another day, fresh day after Gaur Purnima, we're picking up the thread of the mercy given by Lord Chaitanya in the form, especially of this Mahamantra, and of the basic Sambandha. It goes as deep as you want it to go. Bhagavatam and all the Shastra breaks down Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan and our relationship very deeply. But the essence is that there is a God and you're not him. And the God has both impersonal and personal features. And that what's most conducive for actually the living entity for us is to approach Bhagavan because we're persons. And it's true, historically, we can see what happens if people are induced to take up a path of impersonal practice. As Bhagavad Gita points out, chapter 12, verse 5, it's very difficult. It's full of klesha. It's full of challenges. It's full of dukkha. This path is full of difficulties, and it's painful, actually, because it involves artificially letting go of our desire for connection, for relationship, at least temporarily. Eventually, as the thread of verses points out, one comes to approach the Supreme, but it's gradual and it's difficult and it's not advised. And it is artificial because one has to, as long as they're trying to approach Brahman, they have to wipe out any desire for variety. And this desire is coming from the soul because we actually are a manifestation of variety of the Supreme, who is the supreme enjoyer of variety. But our problem is, in conditional life, we're attached and attracted to material variety, which is a problem. So the impersonal path seeks to eliminate all variety. And as long as you're living in a body and in the world, that's extremely painful and difficult to do. It takes a long time. However, the bhakti path is not that path. The bhakti path is accepting spiritual variety. And by that acceptance of spiritual variety, becoming gradually disinterested in material variety. That's natural because spiritual variety is the source of and is qualitatively and quantitatively superior to all material variety. It's the real thing. If you're tasting real ice cream, then the fake ice cream is of no interest to you. If you have like a cup of freshly squeezed orange juice from an orange you just picked from the highest part of the branch on the eastern side of a orange tree facing the rising sun that's gotten all the sweet rays of the sun, and you pick it and you cut it right there and you juice it, offer it to Krishna, and you drink it, then your jug of sunny delight, and fancy sunny delight, but it's got 45 ingredients on it, is of no interest because it's not the real thing. And so it's a material example to display the spiritual point is that spiritual variety actually satisfies what we're looking for, and we gradually become disinterested in matter. That means we become liberated. That's what liberated means. We're not actually situated in matter. We have no relationship with it. We know we have no relationship with it. We don't want it anymore. That's a byproduct of coming closer to Krishna and bhakti. It's not the goal. It's not even the direct process of connection. It's like, no, come close to Krishna. Get in the kirtan, chant japa, get around devotees, hear the Shastra, take prasad. You'll find yourself becoming liberated. Mukti follows. Mukti swayam muklitanjali sevate sman. It's described that for the devotee, Mukti Devi, the personification, the goddess of liberation, follows bhakti with folded hands. And what is her role? Sevate sman. She's asking, how can I be of service to you? How can I help you? She's serving bhakti. She's a follower. She's a consequence of bhakti. She is not the goal of bhakti. She's actually assisting the devotee. And the devotee who's advancing naturally becomes liberated. So much so that, as Prabhupada describes, we had to leave our body. And for a devotee who's leaving their body, in other words, permanently leaving behind this manifestation of our pre-existing connection and deep attachment to matter, it's just like a drunken person, Prabhupada says, who drops their jacket and doesn't realize it. They're so preoccupied with their, imagine they're singing and dancing. You've seen this maybe, if you've ever gone to anywhere in Kali Yuga. People like intoxicated. They drop something and they don't know and they don't care. It's like, oh, body's gone. When did that happen? Because the bhakta is so intoxicated, so captured by the flow of their devotional service. Like, oh yeah, oh whatever, cool. Yeah, I don't really care. And that's just in complete contrast to one who's not liberated. That the process of dying is actually gut wrenching. It's very painful, and it's a process of coming face to face with one's own attachments. For the devotee, the advanced devotee, they don't have such attachments anymore. They have an existing attachment, a living attachment, a present attachment right now in this moment with Krishna that is too urgent to ignore, and the body is of no material body is of no particular independent value at that point. Although while they're in the world, they engage it, of course, being Krishna's energy. So there's this great efficacy and wonderful accelerated value in the bhakti process. And the other point I want to bring out is because it's advaya. In our bhakti process, we we are engaging in the process of glorifying Krishna as the supreme and recognizing that he is the one Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunang Yovidhati Kama. He's the supreme eternal among all eternals. He's the supreme conscious among all conscious living entities. He's the only one who's maintaining all the other variety of living entities, right? There's a God on him. And at the same time, Advaya means we're not different from him. We're eternally connected to him. Which means, as Prabhupada points out, oneness of purpose. We have oneness of purpose. So in our bhakti path, we do want to glorify Krishna as being supreme and eternally greater than us and eternally the source. And at the same time, we want to recognize that in Achintya Bheda, Abheda Tattva, the simultaneous oneness and difference philosophy that we're taught by Lord Chaitanya, we're also completely in the same categories. And we manifest that by gradually becoming one in purpose with him. As we try to serve the desires of Lord Chaitanya, as we try to become one in purpose with the purpose of the Guru, we realize our spiritual nature. That deliberate, especially deliberate, at first it can just be by accident. Just, oh, I chanted that mantra, that was kind of cool. I feel really good. It's like, that's because you became one in interest with the Lord's interests temporarily, even against your own better judgment. You chanted Hare Krishna. Those weird Hare Krishna people walk by, they got you. But especially when you become intentionally aligned with the purpose of the Guru and with Lord Chaitanya's purpose, we realize our nature. And we realize that the entire series of ideas and identities I had that had me being separate from Krishna was just a dream. It was all just a dream. And it goes away. And just like a dream goes away, we realize it had no substance. And I remain. I'm still here. I'm the dreamer. I'm the real person. I wake up and the reality of connection with Krishna is there. So material life evaporates in the context of that realization of oneness with the Supreme. And that oneness is oneness of purpose. So to reiterate, talked about Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan in passing, and then how all the Shastras talking about this, but the process of connection to Bhagavan is actually the most important, because that's where the variety is. And that variety, that spiritual variety that we're gifted so quickly, so soon, despite our disqualifications, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, that spiritual variety disconnects us from any attachment to material variety. And that becomes our experience of liberation. And a devotee who's becomes liberated in this way by attachment to Krishna can gradually give up their body, just like a drunk can drop their jacket in the rain and not even realize. Maybe don't even know where it is. They'll have to go back for it. Done. It's gone. Moving on to my liberated life. And then we heard a little bit about oneness, Krishna consciousness, that it's good, it's valuable, it's important, it's real, it's true, to acknowledge the difference between us and Krishna. I have all these anarthas, only he can help me become purified. He's the source, I'm not the source. He's maintaining me, I'm not maintainer, I'm the maintained. And I'm the same time, there is oneness. There is supreme connection. I'm not of some other category. I'm not my anarthas. I'm not this material body. I'm not my conceptions of self. I'm not my roles in society. I'm not even like my Brahmanhood or any of that. Not my maleness, femaleness. All I am is part and parcel of Krishna, and that's enough. And we realize that oneness also through oneness of purpose with the purpose of Guru and the purpose of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai. So let's hear now any reflections from that.
I so appreciate and love in our philosophy that there are these three like levels of realization, and that and as this verse describes us, and in Prabhupada's purport, that they're different perspective views from different angles of vision. So it's not making any other, the impersonalist path wrong. It's not saying, oh, you only know God within your heart, then you're less than, or some, like this sort of mood. And so there's the acknowledgement of it, and how, depending at the level of realization that you are in, you'll be drawn more to one, or you'll be able to connect with one more readily or not. And also acknowledging the fast track, if you will, or the ultimate goal is to connect to the personal form of God. But that may not be for everyone in this life. They may not be able to reach that based on where they are in their consciousness.
That's true. And the amazing thing about Lord Chaitanya's movement is that by taking the bhakti process he gives, let's say somebody is very attached to becoming liberated from matter.
Yeah.
Based on my study of Shastra, without any ideological or institutional like bias, I would say the fastest and most effective way of doing that is to chant Hare Krishna with love and intention.
Mm-hmm.
There just is no better way for you. There's other ways you could do it. If you want to take several lifetimes of pain and suffering, you could do it. It's just not going to be easy, and it's going to be very prone to falling down, stopping and starting. So why bother?
Right. But some people won't chant it, so like they still have a path towards liberation. It'll just take them longer. Like, I just appreciate that, even that's present
it's the
within
same road.
Yeah.
It's the same road. It's not a different road.
Right.
It's not us and them.
Mm-hmm.
It's Krishna and all those people.
Right.
Who are also part and parcel of Krishna. And we're just very fortunate to receive Lord Chaitanya's mercy and to try to practice that way and to share it. And we also realize that one can practice the essence of the Sankirtan movement in any bhakti tradition. That any bhakti tradition is bhakti. That if there's the chanting of the Lord's names, there's recognition of his personhood, there's prayer, there's service. That's bhakti. And we see that people make tremendous advancement in that way. And our particular loyalty, our particular gratitude extends to Lord Chaitanya, because this process is so accelerated and it is so very carefully defined and guided. The guidebooks of Shastra and of the writings of the devotees are so thorough. The maps are there. The living guides are there. I mean, how many traditions can say that they have a multitude of living guides who personify, actually, without hypocrisy, personify what their Shastra says? How many even have like living Shastra connection that hasn't been altered, for political purposes? It's like very rare in this age. That's Kali Yuga. That's part of the problem. So having that is something we're very proud of. And we display it, we share it, and we say, if it helps you and you want to take up this practice, great. If it helps you continue your own practice in a deeper way, great. If you're like, this is nice, but I'm going to go back to, trying to figure it out on my own, also all right. But any connection to that mercy of Lord Chaitanya is like instant acceleration. So
I just love the. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, a lot of people are in the category of like, I don't know about any of that. I'm still just confused about it all. It's like, that's okay.
Right.
Chant Hare Krishna, you'll become less confused. These verses will make sense. They'll start to make sense. They're not already. As we become, that's also a function of our not being yet liberated from matter. The mind is very clouded by the modes of nature. the very idea of practicing spiritual life is like, what even is that?
Right.
Tanya.
Yeah, I was just going to say the two statements that are the biggest takeaways for me this morning is the supreme truth is self-sufficient, and the Maha Mantra is the express elevator. I mean, that just those two just seem very powerful to me. I was in New York this week by myself on a conference and went into Penn Station, and it was so confusing, and I was worried, I was nervous, and went through all this. I almost got on the wrong train. I'm glad I asked the conductor if it was going the right way. It wasn't. And then after all that, worry and sweating, I finally got on the right train and I sat down. I had no idea. They announced that it was the express train. I was like, yes, thank you, Krishna. Oh, it was interesting. Thank you.
Truth is self-sufficient, and bhakti is the express elevator. Yeah, that's a callback to the first verse of the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada says the first verse that he refers to this, and the line is Janmadhyasya tonvayadi taritascharateshu bhignya swarat. Swarat means independent. It's a very deep verse with a long purport by Prabhupada and a really long purport by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. But Swarat there is independence. They break that down in many ways. These first three verses of the Bhagavatam are actually incredibly rich. Prabhupada is calling it back for us. And the first verse itself is also it's also a callback to the Vedanta Sutra. Janmadi yasya yataha is a verse in the Vedanta Sutra. It's one of the sutras. That's how the verse starts. Janmadi yasya tonvayad, and so forth. So there's all these threads in Shastra. Prabhupada is like threading the needle for us. More reflections. Did you hear?
So I've actually been reflecting on how important it is to have people, the difference, I guess I'm thinking about the difference of like living at my parents' house versus being with like Julia and Sean last weekend. And although, it's fine to be at my parents', but the way you feel and the way that you're reminded of Krishna when you're with others devotees. It's just, yeah. And I think that that's another key, in addition to chanting.
Absolutely.
Is being with others, because
it's so important.
They can help you remember and hold you accountable in a sense. And
hold you accountable, inspire you.
Yeah. And it's just like a level of love and like transcendental vibration that's like kind of unspoken. It's just like felt.
Yeah.
It's just like that.
Yeah, the baseline of activity and consciousness when you're in a room with a devotee is like automatically so high.
Yeah.
That's why there's so much in Shastra about how incredible a gift the devotee association is, and how we should be very careful to deal with them with love and respect. And that's what you're talking about, that experience, which I share. We all experience. Is proof of the philosophy language. A lot of what I was saying in the talk today is that the Bhagavan path is so practical because we are persons and we are craving variety. It's like, here's the proof. Just by being in the same room as a devotee, you get uplifted. How many years of strict Brahman practice in solitude on a mountaintop do you have to undertake to get that benefit?
Right.
That because we are attached to and connected to variety, as soon as we see a person with devotional qualities, and every devotee has devotional qualities, even the very new devotees have something, then we start to like naturally become enlivened, and we grow in that because we learn from people. Actually, they're the best way we learn, which is why the Bhagavatam is presented the way it is. It's essentially a series of pastimes. It's not discourse about what the truth is. There's some of that. There is like discourse is like, okay, then from the ether the air came, from the air the fire came, and from the fire the water came, and the water the earth. These are the five senses. It's like, that's true, but that's in the conversation between Maitreya and Vidura, and it's like immediately followed by like, oh, and then Varadev, like having this like fight with Hiranyaksha. It's all very personal, and it captures the heart. And the culmination is Krishna and Vrindavan, which is the most personal, the most the full blossoming of the flower of bhakti. It's like very, very variegated, so much spiritual emotion, and we get some of that with devotees. And there's no substitute for that.
Mm.
Jai. May you have more devotee association.
Mhm.
Leanne?
I do have something. I just simply like what you said about how we are eternally connected, and how thinking about like how big that is really, when you think about it. So yeah, it's so amazing to hear that. And then you just like, wow, that's a lot. Eternally connected.
And when we're connected in the bhakti process properly, like we are in Lord Chaitanya's line, it's very safe. Because if we have like this naive oneness that is sometimes popular in the yoga scene, where they just take the verses in Shastra that talk about oneness out of context, like Tattvamasi and Soham, I am that, you are that of that, then it becomes like this weird thing where we actually lose a lot of the benefit, because we don't actually acknowledge our agency, we don't actually acknowledge our variety, we don't acknowledge the variety of the Supreme. And it becomes like feel good, but doesn't have any substance. And if you have the other thing where it's just like we're completely different from the Lord, so different, it actually becomes a problem if you take it the wrong way without oneness. If it's difference without oneness, and it's like that feeling you could have when you look at the sky and like, oh my God, there's so many stars. It's a giant galaxy. All these galaxies in the universe. I'm so insignificant. And even if there is a God, he's so much greater than me, and I can never connect to him. He's so big and I'm so small. There's like fear and kind of mortal terror, existential dread. It's like he's sitting there wagging his finger, and I can never like even know. No, it's not that. That's also problematic. We're one enough with God for relationship, and we're different enough with God so that we can have relationship. That's reality. And so there is that beautiful balance that we receive in our philosophy, so that we're not just like cowering, and we're not like merging into some impersonal, non-variegated oneness with no service. No, thank you.
Thank you. It's comforting to hear like eternally the word. Thank you.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare Ram Hare Ram Ram
Ram
Ram
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare. All right. Have a great day.